Hello and welcome back to the He Doesn't Want a podcast. The podcast is sponsored by Learners Trust Driving School and Jumbo Park Racecourse. Today I'm glad to be here with Colin McIlwaine. Colin, how are you, mate? Keeping well?
Yes, very well. We're back to work a few days a week now, so I'm glad to get out of the house. Obviously, lockdown's been hard on us all, so I'm hoping we're heading back to some sort of normality.
Yeah, and hopefully heading back to some sort of football, because we've been missing it a lot. So I have over the last couple of months.
Yeah, as I was saying to somebody today, it must be very hard for everybody. It's been so disorientated, and people must be getting disillusioned the way things are going. And obviously there's a lot of uncertainty out there what way it's going to pan out, not just from the Premiership and the Irish League right through in the amateur football. I don't think anybody knows what way it's going to go at the minute.
Yeah, it's a completely different thing for coaches, really, isn't it? Where you normally have your start date, it's the same every year, and then you know when you're going to go back pre-season, how long you're going to go for. But trying to gauge when to even start a pre-season or when to start training for a lot of teams has been difficult. Would you think yourself would be the same?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, every manager and every coach and management team will be preparing for the season starting, and you'll have your pre-season friendlies organised, and you'll know what your sort of way your start date is and what you're heading towards. But at this stage, I mean, looking at different clubs that have been back maybe at the end of June, start of July, getting the lads in to do a bit of training and hoping that something's going to happen. Getting the odd game in here and there. A lot of people have been saying about that what they've done up to now, they're going to have to restart because of wanting to be at the starting point for their players when the league does start back. So they're going to have to start a tough pre-season now and make sure that they're physically fit. But I mean, my heart goes out and I sympathise with everybody's involved in the game and how they're coping with it with their players and keeping players motivated.
Yeah, and then you also find as well, even when the season does start, obviously the cases are rising with COVID, so the season itself may even be interrupted again. And when's the season going to continue and when's it going to finish? And you've all that there to run into, even further down the line. At the moment, we're just trying to get it started.
Yeah, you just don't know. You could be putting all your time and effort into getting something up and running, and whatever reason, it all gets brought down around these again. So I think it's just a case of doing what you can to making sure your players are physically ready and mentally ready, because that's going to be a big issue as well. A lot of players will be very frustrated with what they've had to go through, and it's going to be a lot of stop-start for them. So it's definitely going to be a hard job for all the clubs in the country.
Yeah, well, I'm part of it, so I'm fighting hard myself. I don't envy anybody else as well in the same position. But what we'll do now, mate, is we'll talk about yourself. We'll start off with your playing career. How did your playing career go? What was the clubs you were at, and any success during your playing career?
Well, listen, not probably take too long, to be fair.
Right.
Certainly not going to be as lucrative as some of your guests. I know some of your guests have been across the water and playing in top flight Irish League and stuff and all that. But to be fair, I can't complain too much. Football's been a massive part of my life from I was a young lad, and it certainly helped me get through school life and stuff. I went to the boys' model, loved playing football for the boys' model. My first club was St Andrews, which was a massive club in around the area where I was brought up. It produced some top class players. I think Stephen Davis might have played for that team, and Keith Gillespie and people like that. I moved on to Shankill Juniors, which was again for me a great experience. It was great memories, friendships that I still have to this day. Then I moved into at 16 years of age, I played for Carrick for a year.
Yeah.
I had a short spell at the Distillery, but it's at a young age I got an illness in my eyes, and I had to get 2 cornea grafts done. It didn't stop me playing, and I wouldn't let anyone mates give me stick about it and saying, you're using that as an excuse, but it did restrict what I could do. So I spent all my career in the amateur league, but to say that, I enjoyed every minute of it. I played till I was 31 until I couldn't see properly.
Right.
And so I done okay. At a year, maybe down at Barn with Jackie Pollock and the boys. 2 years at Rossfern with Hedger and that, and a great club to be a part of. But most of my career was spent at Albert Foundry, who I would later go on to manage.
When you retired at 31, was that when you get into coaching, or were you into coaching before you retired?
2 years before that. I mean, like most people, a lot of people go into coaching when they're coming to the end of their careers, who have played at a high level, and what you'll find around Northern Ireland and probably around Great Britain and even around Europe, a lot of people get into coaching because of their kids. And my young boy just started to play football at a local team, so I went along and started helping out at Springfield Star. And to be fair, I got the buzz for it. And they helped me through getting my first sort of coaching badges. I actually went on and done the B license at a very young age in my 20s. So I got the opportunity to go to Linfield and work in the junior setup there. And I had a really good, strong 1982 team who were very successful, and that's what started and led me into it. And at 31 or 32, I think it was, I done my A license.
Yeah, just very young with your A license. Yeah,
Yeah, it was. I mean, there's a lot of young lads now who are doing it and are coming through. But then going into coaching and management, I probably was young. I mean, I'll not forget the experience of it. It was. I remember watching one of your programs and Barry Begley talking about he was experiencing it there the other week
yeah,
about getting to meet so many people and sort of way networking and learning things from a lot of people, because all coaches learn off each other. But for me, walking in on the first day, it was definitely an eye opener. On my course, there was people like Stephen Loomis and Jim Magilton, Jerry Taggart. There was teams connected all around, like clubs in England, Irish League and stuff. And there was me working with Linfield under 16s, I think it was at the time.
yeah,
But Alan Dornan, who had played most of his career at Linfield, was sitting in the corner, and he called me over because he seen me with a Linfield top on. He said, "Sit down, big man." And I just got to talking to him, and I just went ahead and done it. And to be fair, I loved every minute of it. I really enjoyed doing my A license. I learned a lot. I passed my assessments, and I got it the year after because he took two parts of it.
yeah, yeah. And then getting the rub shoulders with likes of Magilton and Lomas, went on to manage a couple of championship teams and all as well. So it just goes to show the caliber of the coaches that you're working with there as well.
Yeah, it was funny because anybody who's done their A license will know that one of your assessments, you have to build a game up to 11v11, and you've got a specific subject. And I'm trying to sort of tell Stephen Loomis he's doing things wrong in my little park, and telling big Jerry Taggart off and stuff like that. So it was a lot of Irish League boys about. But what you'll find on them courses is everybody becomes together because they're all doing the same thing, no matter what level you came from. You all have the same goal, and the same goal is to get through that week and get 2 passes so you can go on to the second year. So it didn't matter for me coming from Linfield under 16 or anybody who played at the top level. Everybody had to help each other, and you find a lot of friends through it, and a lot of. I'm near sure Paddy Kelly was on mine that year with me as well. So
Yeah,
I did make a lot of sort of way contacts through doing my license. Yeah.
did it give you a lot more confidence as a coach as well then? Because of course you were managing Linfield under 16s at the time, but it gave you a lot more confidence rubbing shoulders with these guys and being able to tell the likes of Steve Loomis and Jerry Taggart, go here, go there. Was that what then made you feel you could step into senior football?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, there was a part of that week whenever we were all sitting on the hill, and I think Nigel Best shouted out for somebody to come and take the warm up, and I've never seen so many people bury their heads in the sand. And I just went, well, I'll do it. Well, and I went and done it, and everybody was really happy enough. And I done a wee warm up and stuff, and just built my own confidence, because it's one of those things. If you want something enough, you'll go and get it. Do you know what I mean? And the thing about the Linfield team that I managed, they were a great side, and I learned a lot from them. I mean, it was Davy Chisholm who gave me my chance at Linfield, and he, though I didn't really know it at the time, he was probably my mentor, and he kept me right, and he gave me the confidence by being able to put me through my license and stuff. So I just knew if I wanted to go on. I didn't. I'm not saying if you have a smashing career in football, you're guaranteed to be a good coach. You're not. But sometimes it'll give you that wee extra edge. People know you. People know your name, know your background, what you've done. I was going to have to come through the other way. And as I say, me and Alan Dornan that week stayed close together, and we all worked hard together, and we ended up getting through it.
Yeah. And then with Linfield, then you were under 16, you're under A license. Did you take that team through under 18, under 19 as well, or?
No, that's probably where it came to me. It was time to go into men's football. I mean, I had the boys for 5 years, and I can't remember losing a league or a trophy. We had a very successful team, but at that stage of the Linfield, I mean, the setup was that they had their first team, obviously, with big DJ, like David Jeffrey, and he had brought me in sometimes and let me shadow him, and I learned a lot from him and Alfie Whaley. But they also had the Swiss management team and then the under 18 setup, which was I think Stick Thompson at the time. So when the boys got old enough, they got transferred on to the senior setup, and was that season, I think, where I did get another team to take, but because it had the boys for so long, and I got an opportunity to move into the men's game, that's where it went for me.
Yeah, and where was your next move then? Where did you go to after that?
My first sort of a job as in senior football, obviously, in the coaching side of things, was Knockbreda. I got her off the door one night from a guy that I know quite well, Hugh Sinclair. People might know him as Sinky.
Sinky, yeah.
He had just took over Knockbreda. He sat down, he sold the whole project to me. Knockbreda, although they were in 1A, were in transition. They were getting ready to go into the Irish League. And back then, it was all about criteria. If you had the standard to play in that league, go in. So Sinky had taken on, and to be fair, I was there for a few seasons and I enjoyed it immensely. Great club to be a part of. Colin Russell and the boys up there put so much time and effort into that. But to work under Sinky and to learn a lot from him, a great man motivator. Anybody who's ever played for him will understand what I'm talking about here. He gave me a free role to go into the coaching and to add my bit to it, which I loved and I enjoyed. And to be fair, we got a bit of success as well by winning the Intermediate Cup that year.
Intermediate Cup, were you still at amateur league then, in 1A or Premier, was it when you just won the Intermediate Cup? Or?
We were 1A, and Sinky had just started bringing some players in. He was starting to build for the future, and we got a wee run in the cup. And to be fair, it was a bit of a Royal Rover stuff. We started to get closer and started to become more believable. It made some good signings, don't get me wrong, and we were getting stronger. But I think it was when we got to the quarter final, we played Armagh City, it might have been, and that they were a championship team and a well recognised team in them days, and to beat them, we drew Portadown in the semi-final. And I remember, we had a wee football pack myself sometimes, but I remember somebody telling me that day that we were 9-1 to beat them. And I think the game was Dungannon, but Sinky had got me working on the training field, and we worked the old one where we're not going to let them break us down, and we're going to try and hit them on the break and stuff like that. And we ended up winning the game, remarkable result. And I think it was Miguel James who scored the winner, and we won the game 1-0, and we ended up going to the final to play DC.
Yeah, and then DC is one. What was the result that day? What was the scoreline?
Well, to be fair, as I say, it was one of the strangest games of football that I've ever witnessed. It was at Drumbo Park or Ballysky, still Lisburn. DC had brought a big crowd down. There was a lot of interest in it. We were the minnows, they were the big team. Obviously, they were one of the top teams in the championship at the time. People probably wouldn't give us much hope, but the game actually ended up 3 each. And the strangest part of that story is that Miguel James had scored, I think, a hat trick for us, and didn't get man of the match. Our goalkeeper did. And that's how the strangest story is, because Paul Mateer, who's been my goalkeeping coach the last 30 years and a very close friend, I've known him from when we were children, probably had the game of his life that night. Not only did he perform well through the whole game, but he saved a penalty for the take of the penalties. Right. In the last minute, somebody had dove in the box and they got a penalty to win the game, and Paul saved it. Then he saved it 3 in a row off the penalty shootout and stepped up and scored the winner. We ended up winning the Intermediate Cup. This was a massive achievement for Sinky and for the whole club, and Knockbreda need to be proud of that. Do you know what I mean? And we all had our bit to play, but it was a real good experience, and it was one of the things that you have under your belt to be involved in that.
Yeah, it's some achievement, especially some night for Paul Mateer as well, to go and do that. That's a goalkeeper's dream. Then you had your time with Knockbreda working with Sinky. Did you then feel like you wanted to dip your toe in and be the main man of the club? Was that what made you move on then from Knockbreda? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. To be fair, Sinky was moving on and he was doing stuff, and I had learned from him. As I say, I loved being at the club, but I just wanted to have a wee bit more of a say, and I wanted to go and see what was out there. So I waited my time. I spent a few months down with Colin McIlwaine, who I met in Canada when I was at Linfield. And with Davy Chisholm and that, we got to go away to different tournaments and stuff. And I spent a few weeks out in Canada, and Colin McIlwaine was a Ottawa Furies manager. And he came back and he took the Bangor job. So I went in and just sort of keep myself ticking over to have a look at what was happening there. But then I got the opportunity with Albert Foundry. And it was a club that I'd spent most of my career at. The phone call when it came through, my friend Gordon Patterson had been my manager when I played up there, and he had phoned me and said about the two of us going together, and he would keep an eye on things, but he would let me go and do my bit and let me go out and learn by myself and do what I wanted to do. So it was a proud moment for me, because I remember playing for Foundry. That back in them days, obviously some of the younger lads might not understand this, but when you were going to your work all day and coming home, getting your training 2 nights a week, and to get picked for the team, get your shirt to put it on, especially a local club, it's a bit of a difference now. I'm not trying to point fingers at the younger generation, but the camaraderie and the pride of playing for a club, and that's what it was. So for me to go in and take over the club, I knew it was going to be a hard task, but I inherited a really decent team, to be fair. Some of the boys, the strange one for me was I was only 33, I think, or 34, and some of the boys who were at the club were my age and stuff. But I think the year previous, Glenn Dunlap was their manager, who was obviously an Irish League legend, and he had took them to the Clarence Cup final. So whatever had happened between then and I think he'd lost maybe 5 or 6 games in a row or at the start of the new season, and he had left. So the opportunity was for me to go in and take over, and that's what we done.
Yeah, and then going in as well, like you said, you get that pride in his shirt. That's really what amateur football's about, really, because it's kind of the difference between Irish League and amateur football. You win an amateur league club, and it is local players playing for a local club, and then you can always get a bigger feel for it, especially being your club, mostly your team when you're growing up and playing yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I had my own vision about what I wanted to try and bring to the club. I wanted to make every player feel a part of it. I wanted everybody to feel equal. We trained together. We improved the training facilities. We improved everything that was going on around the club. I know there was a first team and a second team, but I'm hoping in them days when they were playing for me that they realised that they were part, no matter which team they were in, first and seconds. Yeah. So we just tried to improve everything. I mean, the resources was, I mean, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but the resources that I had was the offer a player was just the parade, or to be proud to come and play for Albert Foundry. I had to sort of talk players into what my ambition was. I sat down with the club on numerous occasions, and my dream would have been to take them the whole way to the Irish League. Now, whether that would be possible then or now, I don't know, but it's a massive club up there, and I always said that obviously there's big competition there with Shankly United and stuff, but we didn't do too bad. The team that I inherited were very good. I think in our first season we went on and finished third for the 6 years that I was there. I think probably my only regret is we didn't win the Premier League. We were so close sometimes, and out of the 6th season, I think we had 3 runners up and a third, which was, if anybody knows the league, knows that's not too bad.
Yeah, it's the competing in the Premier Division for so long is difficult, but then you'd some smashing saves around then. You'd the likes of Newington, Ards Rangers would have been around then as well. So I'm sure it was different every year. Almost it gets more difficult because teams are progressing every year as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be fair, give credit to Big Soap and Sean Paul Murray. The Newington team that they had as an amateur league team was remarkable. They were very strong, very well drilled, and I think we finished runners up to them on an occasion. And you give Lee his credit as well. And I actually watched his interview, and he had to put it in about the day he beat us. So we took him right to the last day of the season. It was our Irish Cup final day. They were in front by a point, and we had to go down and win the game. And it was one of those games where it was close. And I think young Newbury might have scored to make it 1-0 to them, and our dream was over, and they had won it. So I had to pick the boys up after that. But as I say, you know yourself, the teams that have been there. I think there was a year I was there with Macalata, lost 1 game the whole season, and you've your Cumberland Stars who've went out and sort of competed and done really, really well. But what they've achieved over the last few seasons, and amongst all that, I think Drummond might have won the league 1 year. He had a strong year, and well, it's a tough league. And again, I always keep an eye on what's going on around it, and there's some top class teams in it.
Yeah, you won the Border Cup 1 year as well, was it? Also,
we did. I think if I get my dates right, it was 2013. I think it was our 3rd season. As I say, I had inherited a really decent team, young lads coming through from the 18s and 19s. I had people like Sturdy Doyle, who I'll have to mention on this, or I'll never hear the end of it. Anybody knows Doyle and Paul McCord. They were both from Newton Abbey area, but they came into Foundry and made it their own club. So we had a really decent, good squad of players, but I knew you needed to add some players to it, and I'd done it over the years. It took me a bit of time. But I had sort of a support coming from some of the players in the committee, and we got some really good signings in. Like bringing young Aaron Harris in, Barry Moore. To strike for the team, I got John Birds back in from Knockbreda, and Barry Bloomer. But we had a decent team, and that year we got to the final of the Border Cup, and for me personally, it was certainly a proud moment. It was so good to see the club actually getting something back for all the hard work that goes around, because I know you're heavily involved in an amateur league club, but there's so many people who put so much time and effort in, and they're all volunteers, and all they want to see is their club be successful. So yes, to go on and win the Border Cup was a massive achievement for me personally.
Yeah, and then like you said, it's the people around the club, it's so much to them as well. And then any sort of success in amateur league club is what we all do it for, really. But you did come close to winning the Premier Division. It was a regret of yours. Did you get to a certain stage where you felt then it was maybe not going to happen? Or
yeah, as I say, we always had to keep working hard. You have to keep putting effort in. I mean, anybody who knows what it's like to manage a team, and as I said, I had the support in the first few years with Gordon behind me and the management team, and then a few years in, I had the opportunity of bringing George O'Boyle along with me, and that made a massive difference for me as well. But personally, the Border Cup made it a bit easier because we had brought silverware to the club. I'll never forget, even though we'd been successful, the ugly side of management is when you start leaving players out and you start hurting players. You have to make big decisions, and even with the Border Cup, we went and won it. I had made a big decision in the final to play Gary Chisholm. Now, Gary Chisholm had been back and forward from the club a few times. A massive player to have around the club. Super player, played for Linfield. But he'd only come back for my second spell to play for me, and he was only back in the club 2 weeks, I think. And we'd been winning on a winning streak, and it was a hard decision for me today. Do I play my best team, or do I stick to the boys who've got me there? And this is just the other side of management. And even though you think you've got the backing of everybody, sometimes you just have to hide away and sit down and have a good think and make a decision. But it was a gale force win today. We played Kilmore at Seaview. And anybody who knows Gary will know his attributes of winning the ball in the air and being strong in the middle of the park. So we played him, and that annoyed a few people still, even though they'd won. But that's the sort of thing that you have to be successful about. Because I can even remember, and go back to what you're saying, even though I got 3 runners up at third, even though I got a Border Cup, even though what we haven't talked about, I took the team to the Stephen Sons Cup final. Some people in around the place in the area might have said that wasn't good enough. We should have been winning everything. Even though we had no resources, we were a small amateur league club, or an amateur league club, and even though people just have their own opinion about things, obviously.
Yeah, it's one of them things as well as a manager, where you get a player in who you know his qualities and how good he is, and then you have to have that conversation yourself about, if we win this game, I'll probably still get a bit of criticism. If we lose this game, I'll get a lot more criticism. But either way, you're going to have some people saying you should have played him, some people saying you shouldn't have played him, and you're not going to keep every single person happy. And it's just one of those issues you have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the game. You know what it's like building up to the game. Yes, and every manager knows you have to have authority. You have to have authority over your players. But on the other hand, when you really analyse it, you need to have sort of skills of man management. You have to be like a social worker sometimes, a counsellor sometimes. You have to go and show the younger lads pastoral care. You have to be friends, the older players. You have to try and beat all these people. But yet you still have to try and stick it in your head about what you're going to do and making sure you're doing the right thing. And throughout my whole career, I know there's been decisions that I've made that maybe that haven't been the right ones. I know that, but I'm sure that's the same at every level for every manager. And yet we've got some things right. So it was one of those things. Yes, I regret not winning the Premier League, but I'm also proud that we produced in them 6 years. I think, as I say, with the 3 runners up on the third, we were always thereabouts, and people recognised who we were. So I mean.
And the achievement of getting the Steeling Sons as well, similar to the achievement you had in Knockbreda. There's a lot of big teams in the Steeling Sons, and being a wee amateur league club, even getting to the finals, an achievement in itself.
Yeah, it's been it was an experience and a half. I mean, I touched on it there with George O'Boyle. In my 4th year, I just needed a bit more help on the training field. I needed our club was getting bigger and bigger size-wise. I was going to training, and the one thing about the boys was they were very loyal and committed. I could never really complain, bar 1 or 2 maybe, but there was no boys making silly excuses not to go there to train 2 nights a week. So we were like maybe 30 boys training for the 2 teams, and so obviously the opportunity of getting George to come into the club was massive for me, for his experience. Obviously George has done at the highest level with playing for his country and professional football in Scotland. He had a spell of France, England, played at the Irish League. So for somebody like him to come in, and the only thing he asked me for on the day that he agreed to come in was that he would have a say, and that was, I mean, there was no brainer there. Just of course come in. So to get him in, it was a real plus. And again, continuing to sign decent players. I got young Conor Corey into the team. I had the McIlwaine brothers on the team. As I say, we got on a run in the Steeling Sons. And to be honest, it was something that I wanted so much, because in my first year at the club, we'd made a mistake. We got to the quarter-final of the Steeling Sons, and we made a mistake where we'd signed a goalkeeper a day after our deadline. I put my hands up, and the secretary put his hands up. We played him in the last 16 where we won 5-0 or something, or 5-1. and we were found to have breached the rules, so we were put out. We were due to play Cumberland Star, and I actually did believe that we had a wee chance there that year. Not taking it away from any club, but the Steel and Sons then obviously had all the championship teams, intermediate teams in it. And again, anybody who's won it now, or if I get the chance to go again, it's certainly still a massive trophy. But for that season when we got to the final, I think it was 2016, it was a massive achievement, and it was very enjoyable, but I still have a bad feeling about that day.
Who was it that beat us in the final that day? What was the scoreline?
We lost. We had drew Larne in the quarter final, so nobody didn't really give us a chance going down to Inver Park. It was big Davy McAlennan's team, but fair play to George and the work, the research we'd done in it. There's a guy that played for me from us to take over Foundry, Stephen Young. People would know him as Younger. Who would turn any defence and was a super player, but sometimes Stephen would have had a back wee injury here and there, so he would have done a wee bit of scouting for me. So I sent him to watch him, like Lauren as well. Anyway, cut a long story short, down at Inver Park with 1-3-1. Ian West, who was another big player for me, had scored 2 really good goals. So we went to the semi-final where we played the PSNI. It was strange night as well. We went 3-0 up. At half time we were winning 3-0. Now whether it was something that I'd done wrong or something that the players got into their head, James E. Kirk and his boys came out and battered us for a half an hour. And the next thing we knew, we were on 3-8 in the semi-final of Steel and Sons. But we never gave up. And there was a young lad who played for me, and I think he's still playing for Foundry, a young lad called Darren McComb. Most people would know him as Napper. And he just seemed to come up with big goals at the right time, and he scored to make it 4-3, and we got to the final. Ironically, it was Harneybeef Welders, who were obviously a massive championship team, and I think they'd won it, or they'd been beaten in the final the year before, or within the previous years, so they were out for blood. They had big names at the club, and again, bookies hadn't, the bookmakers wouldn't give us much hope. I don't think any people would give us much hope, but again, we went that Christmas morning. The whole build-up to it was really good for the club. It was good PR. Obviously, it's Christmas, and I kind of tell young lads who've got young families about concentrating on the final whenever they're trying to run about buying their kids their presents and stuff. So I know there's been a lot of people been in arbitration, and a lot of people would give Roddy after Ireland to be in arbitration that day. But the hardest bit of games was build up to Christmas, was leaving a few boys out of the squad, but we had to make a decision, and we went against the Welders that morning, and I picked the team. Again, I left a few boys on the bench who weren't too happy, but we went with what we had. Our goalkeeper, who was called Sprite, pulled off some really good saves in the first half. Michael McLeod scored for the Welders to make it 1-0, but then we made a change in the second half and brought Paul McCord and Marcus Beattie on and went for it, and we should have won. And that's not me just trying to say that. Anybody who was at the game for the last 25 minutes to half an hour, seen what we done. We turned the game on its head. Big part of that was down to Paul. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life was leave Paul on the bench that day. But he was probably a manager's dream. He never made too much of a fuss. He was always at his training. He always worked hard. Same as Sturdy Doyle, really good lad to have around the place. But Paul went on and changed the game on its head for me. And we took it to extra time, but just before extra time, in the last few minutes, young Marcus Beattie had an opportunity from a few yards out with a header, and he just directed it by a post. But the funny story about that is he was going to leave the club in September, and I actually went to his door and said to him, I think we'll score the winner in the Steel and Sons final this year. And if he had done that, I would have went, it would have been something like Mystic Meg or something, but he was so close. But not only that, and in the extra time, we were on top, we battered them, and young Marcus went through 1-on-1 again, and Michael Doherty saved up with his feet, and it went to penalty kicks. And my only regret is we didn't have a plan for the penalties. I let the boys put their hands up, and they put their hands up, and two of the boys missed, which is heartbreaking for them and heartbreaking for us. I mean, it was Paul Young who was loyal to me throughout the whole time at Foundry and even at Distillery when I was there, and I felt for him. And Bill Maxwell, anybody knows Maxwell, plays in a little part, and very, very strong player for me the whole time I was at Foundry. I felt so bad for him. But in saying that, I remember going into the change room, and anybody that knows me knows I'm a strong character, and the tears were coming out of my eyes, and I didn't know what to do or what to say. I looked around the room, and I just seen so much heartbreak, and the only thing that could come out of my mouth was that people don't remember runners up, but they'll remember us today, and that was it.
Yeah.
So it was an experience for the club. It was really, really good.
Yeah, it's obviously something then as well that as you go on in your career, you'd love to then go back to the Steel and Sons final and get over that, because I'm sure it's something that would still hurt you until you finally go to our Steel and Sons and win it.
Oh, of course. I mean, to get the second bite at the cherry would be good. It's the whole experience. I don't know how to deal with it better and stuff. As I say, I have an understanding partner. He wasn't too much on my case, but I'm sure some of the boys were getting a hard time, and especially maybe some of their wives or partners that don't really understand how much football means to people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're actually going to leave me Christmas Day. But I remember, I mean, George had a massive input on all that we done, and he had a big part to play in that run that year. But I remember going to my sisters from a Christmas dinner, and I couldn't even look at it, to be fair. And it wasn't about me. It was more about the boys, how disappointed they were. But I remember George phoning me and saying, "Look, come on into the house and we'll sit and we'll have a beer and cry under a beer," sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think I said something like to him, "I just wish we could beat 5-0 a day." And he went, "Don't be so stupid." He says, "You've went out and you've shown people, we've went out and shown people what we're about, and we've took it right to the wire." So, but again, as I say, Gary Smith came over to me straight after, shook my hand, just says, you should have and you could have won that day. And fair play to the Welders, they had won it, and they had experienced the defeat the year before. I think it was the year before that against Carrick.
Yeah, and then obviously then going back again, it's Christmas Day is the biggest day of the year for most people. It can either make or break your Christmas Day, really, can't it?
Oh, definitely. But again, as I say, anybody who plays in the competition from the first round, their dream is to be there and that final. I know loads of people who've won it. I know people who've won it on several occasions. Do you know what I mean? And they'll always tell you throughout the years. I remember as a young lad going and watching Linfield Swifts and a few finals and stuff like that. So although the intermediate teams have been taken out of it, it's still a prestige trophy to go and try and target for your club.
Yeah, definitely. So your time then, Albert Foundry, you were for 6 years, was it, in total? And then you moved on from there. So you moved on. What was your next move then?
Well, it was a wee bit of a sort of way, I'm not blaming the Steel and Sons Cup final, but that was the year where in the second half of the season, where it was a bit of a hangover or a bit of bad luck, started to lose an old player here and there through injury. A couple of people got a bit disillusioned. That was my final year. I just knew it was the right time. It wasn't an easy decision. I love Albert Foundry. I know the hard work was in from the committee and the people around me, but we got the opportunity then, me and George, to move on to Lisburn Distillery. So that was my next move. And I went in there at the end of my 6th season.
Right, okay. And then moving to Distillery, then they were then an Irish League club. So that was you stepping up as a coach as well then. So great opportunity for yourself and George.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, the truth of the story is that the club had made contact with George, I think, while we were in our sort of Steel and Sons run, just to see what we were doing, how we were feeling. And we said straight away, no, that I know they were advertising for a new manager. But then Distillery, again, at the end of that year, I got the phone call from the club and asked would I come in and talk to them. And as I said, I just thought it was the right time for Foundry to go in a different direction and try something new to try and bring success to the club. And we met with the Distillery board, and to be fair, from the minute we walked in, we were made to feel so welcome. Lisburn Distillery are a massive club. They had been through a few really bad years of going through relegations and stuff. I mean, the sad thing for them was they were such a big club. And I mean, you look at the history of the club, and I know you just can't keep living on history, but if you look at what they've achieved in their lifetime with so many Irish leagues, Irish cups, and playing so many times in Europe, so many massive players come through that team and that club was unreal. But when we sat down with them, they were honest with us and said that what had happened to them was all financial things and stuff that I didn't really understand, to be fair. Of how it goes from being so high up in the leagues to go so low. They've just been relegated in the Championship too. But they were very keen to get myself and George on board. And they were very sort of welcoming to us. And we sat and we talked it through. And then it was our decision and we decided to go there.
Yeah, I take it then bringing yourselves in, then the aim was to get themselves back up in the Championship 1 first and foremost.
I think then, to be totally honest with you, Guy, it was about survival. When we took over, I had a few conversations with the previous manager, which was Sean Paul Murray was there with big soap aiming. For whatever reason, it didn't work out and stuff. Sean Paul, I got friendly through Sean Paul working on the AFA and that. He had phoned me and told me that he thought the phone call was going to come to me from the Distillery, and he explained it all to me. So whichever his squad of players was there, they all went. we inherited one player, 17 years of age.
Right.
So the initial talk at the club was we needed to make sure we steadied the ship. It would have been non-full for them to get put out right out of the Irish League. And we had to do a job from that day of building a team. Myself and George used all our contacts that we had. We took young lads in from the reserves teams in the Irish League. There was a few boys who had been loyal to me and stuff, and I thought were good enough to move into the distillery. It came from Albert Foundry. And we slowly but surely just put a team together. I had a couple of young lads that had been on around some of the programs. I worked as a community coach, and some young lads that had spotted through coaching and stuff, and had maybe been a bit of a mentor towards over the years. Give them their first break in the Irish League, and we went on a journey, and it was tough. And there's no sense telling any lies. The story as supporters, as a club, are really, really good. But our first year was really, really hard going into that Irish League.
Yeah. How did you finish the first year? What was the...
So we were never really out of danger. We were in around the bottom 5 or 6 from the start to finish. We had a couple of good wins away to Newry and stuff. Tough league. But it went right down to maybe 4 games or something before the end, where we actually got the win that we needed up in Sport and Leisure, which is a Belfast Celtic now.
Yeah.
We went up there and we dug out a win, and we stayed up, and that was an achievement within itself, because we knew the first year was all about. And again, as I say, bringing some of the players in. I mean, I think my first signing was Stephen Curley. I don't know why you know Stephen.
Yeah.
Stephen had been around the Irish League with Knockbreda, and he came in and signed for me, and he was a great lad to have around the place, captain. Just, he was really good with the younger players. Aaron Hart that came in the middle of the park, was saying a decent goalkeeper, and Jonah Nicol, and the boys have stuck together, and they fought out every match, and we dug out some results. So I think we finished around about 4th bottom. But in saying that, is that good for Lisburn Distillery as a club? Probably not. But the situation we were in, with the resources that we had, I would certainly say it wasn't an underachievement.
Yeah, because although the club has been a long-standing thing, you built a team from nothing there, and one season. I'm sure even anybody looking, I didn't realise that the situation you walked into myself. But everybody's seen the club going down through the leagues, and probably wouldn't have been able to fathom it if they had dropped out of Championship 2. But going in and having to build a whole team from scratch, gel them together, and then win enough games to even finish where you did was a big achievement.
It was. I mean, again, I'll still go back to the hard work that goes on in the background. It was, I will say it myself. It was myself and George and Paul, who I talked about earlier on as a goalkeeping coach, going in and trying to attract players. And we told them it was about building a platform and a foundation. But there's a lot of hard work goes on there in that club as well, just to keep the club afloat. And as I say, the committee that's there, the supporters clubs that are there, the volunteers that are running about looking after the pitch and stuff. It was a big achievement for us all, because they were on a downward spiral, and we sort of steadied the ship a wee bit. And then we started, and it's the mates word of mouth, because the players who were there then started to talk with other players. And you'll know this yourself, players network, and sort of way you build reputations, and people started to say, well, it's actually a decent setup, and training's good, and that's one thing I've done from day one with my training. My style of training is that I always try and make sure the boys are smiling and make sure the boys are enjoying themselves, and whether it's passing or shooting or whatever it may be. I wouldn't be in, and Sink will hit me for saying this, if we'd have lost at Knockbreda way back then, Sinky would have run the boys for an hour and a half. George would have been a bit like that as well. Whereas if we had a bad performance at Foundry or Distillery, it would have been, right, we're getting hurt on Tuesday night. I'm more along the attitude of, boys, you want to get fit, you need to go and get fit when you're not with me. And you need to be playing football when you're with me. And give them that incentive to do extra night at the gym, and to be fair, the boys weren't that bad and stuff. But that first year was a big achievement. We enjoyed it. We went on, we saved them, and then we went on to the next year, where we should have probably been competing for at least a top 2 spot. We ended up 4th, and we were so close, to be fair, and that was a big transition within a year. Yeah,
definitely, it's a big, massive transition in a year. Just see the point you're talking about with coaching, because even there's big difference between amateur clubs and then your Championship 2 teams, but you still only get the same amount of time with players a week, which is a couple of hours twice a week before you have a game on a Saturday. So it is very important that players do their own work outside of that, because if you're only working on fitness Tuesday and Thursday night, for example, then you're not, it's the higher you go also, you have to really work on your patterns of play, you have to work on set pieces, you have to go into more depth in the coaching in those aspects, so you have to trust the players to keep a high level of fitness.
Yeah, no, 100%, and that's why it's important that sort of way players, no matter what level the players, get to their training as much as possible. I think the thing that's maybe changed that we have to be sympathetic towards is one, that people's work patterns can be different than it was back then, and there you do get a player that maybe has to go into work early or is working late or they're on shifts or whatever. But unfortunately, again, my philosophy was you need to make a way of making it work at football. And I totally agree with you. People need to go, and it is different sort of way the higher levels you go up. Boys will probably put a bit more effort into keeping their fitness levels up and stuff. But I'm a great believer in what you said there. Your Tuesday night could be a bit of the skies running involved, plenty of ball work. Thursday night's more about building, preparing for your game, because every game's different and every game that you're going to go and compete for. I sympathise with clubs that facilities sometimes can hold you back, and maybe you don't have the right proper facilities. I mean, if you look at a lot of clubs, you're training Tuesday and Thursday night for 1 hour. And by the time the boys get done, you get them warmed up, you get them a wee game at the end. You're coaching, what, 35, 40 minutes? We always tried to make sure we had at least one night at the Distillery. And then when we moved into the Welders, at least one night where you had an extra half an hour to work on patterns of play, set pieces, or whatever it may be. So it is hard. And that's one thing I always say to any of my players that play for me. You're responsible for your fitness levels. You're responsible. Yes, you'll do a pre-season. Yes, you'll do some stuff for us. But if you don't come to me and complain you're not fit, go and get fit. And we will do some stuff to keep that taking over. But you need to learn what we want to do on the training field.
Yeah, and your second season in Distillery, you finished fourth. You did say it was very close. Was it defeats against the top teams that harmed you, or was there defeats against lower level teams within the division that year that affected you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back. Obviously, make sure I got everything right. I think it might have been Dundella's year. You were really deep, you could say. I think that year was just a little bit lack of inconsistency at times. We were always capable of beating big teams and teams at big games, but it's just sometimes we just didn't go on a run when we should have. Again, if you look back to where we started, it was an achievement within itself to become a team that was just knocking on the door of maybe promotion. Do you know what I mean? We were getting closer to it. And the one thing about that league, but it is unforgiving. Like that second division of the championship, it is tough, and you don't know what you're coming up against sometimes. And I know the Newington lads have went in there and done really, really well. And there's other teams in there in Tobermore and Beulah Park. They're tough away trips, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's a league. Again, as I say, I know like a Bangor who were in our league went out for a year and they're back in, and it's hard just to imagine what you need to sort of way go on and win the league. But again, as I say, we weren't too disheartened. We moved on to the next season. We worked with the resources we had. We attracted as many players as we could. Again, in and around the club, we had a good camaraderie amongst the boys, and we were definitely a decent outfit.
Yeah, and then your time at Distillery, then you had the opportunity to go to Welders. Was that in your third year at Distillery, or?
Yeah, but we're just coming to sort of way to the end of our third season, and things just got a wee bit difficult. I'm not coming on to say anything about a club or whatever. Things were progressing what we wanted to go on, maybe wasn't getting there, and there was an opportunity of myself and George putting in for the Welders job, and the Welders had just sort of advertised, and I went to the club. I done everything right. I went to the club and told them that we were going to apply for it. I took my players instead of going to training. I took them for a meeting and brought them in and explained everything to them, so that if something did happen and the word had got out that we had applied for another job, it could have went against us, because if we hadn't got the Welders job, and the boys would have been saying, well, sure, you went away anyway. But that wasn't the case. We in my heart of hearts, I didn't really want to leave the Distillery at that time, but the situation was there. We applied for the job. We went and spoke to Jason Hill. Jason Hill, obviously, played for Glentoran, and asked him if we got the job, would he come in with us to give us a wee bit more of experienced management team. Anybody who knows Jason, he's had a super career and he had a lot to offer. So Jason agreed to it. So I done everything right. I told the players, I told the club. We went for an interview, and within 24 hours we had the job been offered to us, and that was so quick. And I had to go back and tell the players that we were going to move on, and it shook every one of their hands. There wasn't one player that said what I'd done was wrong. Again, with the club, there was no, from what I could see, no hard feelings. They had appreciated the time and effort that we put into the Distillery. Because that's one thing. If anybody knows me, you need to be committed. A guy like yourself, no matter what level you're at, your players will pick up if you're not committed, and they will know what it means to you. Football, people think when you're in management, our coaching, it's only a Tuesday and a Thursday night and a Saturday. You know it's not. It's fully 24/7. If you're not making a phone call, you're sorting something out about a fixture, or you're away dealing with something about the club. Yeah. And I think that's why the players appreciate it. That obviously I've came through from the Albert Foundry to Lisburn Distillery. Nobody was going to hold it against me that we were moving on, myself and George. But for George as well, the two of us have put 100% into what we've done up to then. Nobody could say, well, we didn't really give everything. We did give everything, and we done what we could in the 3 years. So we got the opportunity to go to the Welders. It was coming up to the end of the season. I think there was 2-3 games left, and we went in and we started our journey with the Welders.
Yeah. Did you find it an easy transition moving in with a couple of games left this season where you get a full pre-season with a team, or was it a wee bit strange coming in when you'd still a couple of games left and then seeing what was about?
I mean, I want to make sure what I say comes across the right way. I mean, the Welders are a Championship 1 club. They're a big club, and I would always take an interest in all the teams and keeping an eye on how they were getting on and stuff, and some really big names in the team and stuff. So I think going in with the 3 games to go, myself and George, we just went in and said, we were going to look at what we had, get a chat around the club and see what was going right or wrong, and give ourselves a bit of time before pre-season started. So we went in and just gave everybody an opportunity for 3 games, just sort of rotated the team. We lost the 3 games, but I think that was like Larne and Portadown and somebody else, so they weren't heavy defeats. They were just, the Welders were on a bit of a bad run, and we had a good look around us, and then we prepared for pre-season.
Yeah, and coming into pre-season, then I suppose then you had an opportunity then to see what you needed for the season ahead. So coming into pre-season, did you bring many new players in? And then what was your aims then for that first season with the Welders?
Yeah, I think without naming too many names, we made a few decisions that some of the players would move on and further their career somewhere else. We made a decision, and we tried to comply as best we could with the club and what they wanted and what their ambition was. So we brought some younger lads in. We brought young Dylan Davison in from Coleraine, which was for me a really big signing. Young Jonathan Smith in from Linfield. We got Matthew Ferguson back in from Glenavon. So we started to put a few younger players in around the place, and the players who'd stayed. And I thought, to be fair, pre-season went okay. We'd worked hard and some decent matches in pre-season, but from the start of the season, obviously we only got 18 weeks before the journey ended, and for me that was far too soon. And to be totally honest, the biggest regret for me is I do believe for the management team we had with himself and George and Jason, and that given a bit more time would have been fine.
Yeah, and then you're bringing in younger players. Sometimes it takes younger players longer to gel as well, and then get used to playing at that level. Even if they're coming from reserve teams and stuff, then it's a big change going into Championship 1.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough, really really tough league, obviously, and massive clubs. When you look at the teams that were in and around us with Ballinamallard and Portadown and Newry and Ards, Dundalk, who were going really well in around the time. But I mean, for me, to put it in perspective, it wasn't a very nice experience. It was my first really poor experience and bad experience in management and coaching. I'd had it so easy. When I say so easy, I'd always been so welcomed and I'd been so sort of successful in and around Foundry and Knockbreda and the distillery, and for them 18 weeks. But for me to put things into perspective, I mean, again, I go back to myself and George and Jason, the amount of effort and time we put into what we were doing. We beat Carrick Rangers away from home and Warren Point away from home in the cup games, which were 2 Premier League teams. We beat Portadown. We beat Newry home and away, who were relegated from the Premiership year before. We beat Ards, who were relegated. Portadown had done them in the league. With a couple of decent wins away to Derbyshire, Queens, PSNI, and we were sitting just outside the top 6. So for me, our target when we were talking to the committee was that we would target the top 6 for our first season, and it would be a massive achievement because of the clubs that were there. We also took them to our Championship semi-final, where we lost. I know we lost 4-0 down at Ballymena Showgrounds, but we were coming up against Big Lackey on the night, who was unstoppable. A very, very strong Ballymena team who wanted that trophy so much, and Big DJ. So for me, it's not sour grapes, and it's not me trying to point the finger at the Welders. What it is me explaining to people that it's what football can do to you. You can go on to such a high, and all of a sudden go down to such a low, and it's ruthless. When I was speaking about Sinky earlier on there, and I think a few weeks after me, something similar happened to him at Bangor, when he was, whenever I thought from the outside in, looked as if he was going well at Bangor, and then all of a sudden he was relieved of his duties. So for me, as I say, it wasn't a very experience. It was my last job that I've had, which was just 2 weeks before Christmas. We got the phone call, and we got asked to sort of resign, and we said no because we don't think it was the right thing. I don't want people to think we walked away from a bit of pressure. But then the other side of the coin too, Gary, is that, I mean, Arnold Welders have got every right to want who they want at running their club. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's not, there's no sour grapes there. They have every right. I know Gary Smith quite well, and I wish him all the best. There's some really good people around the Welders, some very good players, trust me, and they'll do well this season. And as I say, that's just one that we just sort of have to now just put in the back burner. It wasn't a good experience to lose your job, but these things can happen. We just got to bounce back from it.
It's part of your coaching journey, really, isn't it? The further as well you go up the ladder within coaching, then there's more expectations, and then you're moving up. It's your first job as well, where you almost feel like you've got to prove yourself, where other guys have maybe been there before and proven themselves, and maybe even given a bit longer at clubs, if that's the case also.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it was certainly my first job. I mean, I'm not saying it was any easier for Jason or any easier for George, especially. George has probably been around professional football and moving from club to club. He knows what it's like to play against Celtic and Rangers and stuff like that. He knows about the highs and the lows. The same as Jason playing in massive cup finals that he's lost maybe at Glentoran and some he's won. So, but for me, it was just that was a wee bit abnormal, and I just wasn't used to it, if you know what I mean. I've got a real good support network around my family and around my friends, and people may think, well, what's he talking about? It's only football, but you'll know being a manager, it's not only football, it's a massive part of your life. And for somebody to take it away from me like that was, in a nutshell, it wasn't a very nice experience. But again, I'm not holding any grudges against anybody. It's their decision, and we'll now just have to wait and see what happens for us.
Yeah, like we spoke about it earlier, it's not just your training twice a week and your match on a Saturday. You put so much into being successful as a coach, and also the club that you're with, you want them to be successful. And then it's just like that, it's gone. So you obviously had a break. You've had a break from football since then. So has it given you the break, given you the urge to get back involved again, or if you feel you maybe need a wee bit longer just to kind of recharge the batteries?
No, it's been probably a longer break than I thought it would have been. It was just before Christmas, so we're in September now.
The season never finished last year. So
a big part of that could be to do with COVID. Obviously, I mean, I've already said about sympathising. If there was a time ever to get a break in football, it would be this year, because I don't have to worry about all what's going on in the round trying to keep a club afloat or keep players motivated and all the rest of it. So the timing of it could be good. But once it happened, myself and George and Jason and Paul, we're all good friends, and we keep in contact. And I think we got together the week after, and we made a decision that if something came up that was the right model for us, the right project for us collectively, then we would apply for it. But again, if something came up for an individual off the four of us that was right, and it was right for the person, then there would be no hard feelings, and we certainly wouldn't hold it against each other, because we can't sit about and wait and see what does come. Again, ideally, I would love for us to get another crack at it. I know George is keen to get back into the game at the minute, and if the right offer was to come along, and for me, to be fair, it wouldn't matter which level it was at. It would just have to be the right place and the right club. Again, if it's a part of a management team or if it's a coaching role, who knows? It's just we're in a situation now. I think the only person who's happy at the minute is my missus, because she gets me to take her out shopping all the time, and I hope football. And that has to stop quickly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to get my foot out the door that way. But again, it's going to be down to now just whatever comes along. We'll not go haunting too quickly, but we'll certainly look at what becomes available, or if the phone rings and it's the right club, and then who knows.
Yeah, you can also find the opportunity as well that once the season does start, to go around and see a bit of football. And when you're managing as well, you don't really get to see players play. You just hear about players. And then now you have an opportunity to go around and get a feel of players within different teams and watch different teams. So when you come up against them again, you'll be better prepared, and you have an opportunity then to network, basically.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've already talked about this. Once if it does kick off and there's a lot of games that are going, we're going to start getting out and watching games and stuff. I mean, I've made so many friends through different clubs and so many sort of like contacts, and some of the players that have played for me, and I like to see them doing well. It's not even, I wouldn't even think twice of going and watching the Championship 1 game, and if the Welders were playing, or I mean, young Matthew Ferguson, who's been with me through my career at Distillery, and he's done so well, and he's moving in. I'd like to see how he's getting on. Other ones that I brought maybe to different clubs and stuff. So I'll have an opportunity there to go and watch games and stuff. What I don't want is, and I know you're going to laugh here, you don't want to walk into a club and people going, these two are up here because there may be a job coming up. And you know what amateur league like, or you know what people are like around the clubs, and that's nothing me and George are about. We've got on with a lot of people, and we're anybody who knows us are friendly people. So we will get out and watch a little bit of football and see how it pans out.
Yeah, people think is there like a Grim Reapers for managers coming and watching games.
So that's the way it is. To be fair, I mean, a lot of people would have said that. It was Gary Smith at our game was watching it. I'm sure Gary wasn't at our game was wanting me to get sacked. You know what I mean? I'm sure people were at the Bangor games weren't saying, well, he's down there hoping the he's going to get sacked. It's not like that. If we get a longer break than we first imagined, then we'll go and watch football and keep ourselves taking over. For me personally, I'm due to do my CVT for my A license to renew it. So every 3 years you have to sort of way doing our training bit. So I'll concentrate on getting that as well. I'll keep myself ticking over. I do a wee bit of work for the IFA in a junior game, the grassroots. So I'll keep myself ticking over. I'm out coaching every day. I'm in my own job. I've got a great job where I get the chance to work with people in the coaching industry, and I'm out sort of way keeping myself going that way. So who knows?
Yeah, you're definitely not out of the game anyway. You're still coaching away. Good stuff.
I'm saying coaching away. I mean, I had a strange experience the other week. My young stepson plays for Albert Foundry under 10s, and the other and he's up on the big pitch taking the young lads out of the Foundry's first team, and I'm down taking the under 10s. So I'm one of the players shouted there and so Mac, have you found your level? And I'm going, oh, maybe that's where it is. But that will keep me away from the game. To be fair, I will definitely be involved. And as I say, it's like your club at the minute too. You don't know where you're going yet, but what's going to happen. And I have to be sort of way sympathetic towards the clubs, and they'll all be finding their way through and trying to get the season started as quickly as possible. And who knows what will happen between now and maybe after Christmas or so.
Yeah, and then Jason, he's back playing football. He scored yesterday against our over 35s for Edgefield. So he did.
Well, to be fair, and I really shouldn't do this because I know he's going to watch this, right? But Jason will be playing, right? But I get him to say he's finished with the hang the boots up and stuff. But was he playing for Glentoran Legends, was he?
It was Edgefield over 35s. It's a league which is only 2 years old. It's called the Emerge Invitational League. So it's for mental health for players coming out of the game to get them back involved again. And ourselves, we only started an over 35s team this year. That was our first competitive match yesterday against Edgefield. But it was a good game, and it was a good level as well. The players know that they can't run as much anymore, so they try and keep the ball down and play. But thankfully, we kept Jason to just one goal. He scored a penalty, so we won the game 2-1. I had to get that in there. So it did.
To be fair, myself, it would be a network of various league players and managers and stuff who would do a wee bit of charity work and charity games. And if there was anybody sort of way within the Belfast area who we needed to try and use money for, we would all be heavily involved in that. And Jason never says no to playing a game. He always likes to get involved in it. There's anybody that lives where I live, I'm not going to talk about with the Digger Whiteside and that, but it would be all ex-Irish League players, as you say, that maybe can't run as much, but would still put a shirt on.
Still have a player disability.
I'll go out and do it for a good cause. And as I say, you don't have to ask Jason twice to help you out. Like he'll help you out that way.
Yeah. What I want to do now is I want to go into somebody enjoying the fun questions. So I used to do best player you've played with or coached, but I was given the idea a while ago to start because some people find it hard to name just one. What would be your five-a-side team out of played with or coached?
Am I allowed a couple of subs?
Oh, you can have as many as you want, but right run out of time if you want to keep name dropping.
No, listen, that's a hard one because obviously some of the talent that's at the Welders at the minute, some of the talent that I brought in, I mean, it was probably too short of a period for me to include them. I would probably be more entitled to go into my amateur league time and probably moving into the sort of way of the Distillery, as I say, Matthew Ferguson, to me, has the potential to go on and play at the highest level in the Premier League and stuff, young Dylan Davison's. But going into the amateur league, I'll try and keep it in that way. And I know I'm going to say something wrong here, right? I know my phone's probably going to go the minute you put this on air, and I'm probably going to lose a couple of friends. So I want to thank you for that, first of all, right? Goalkeeping ways, I can't look by Paul Mateer, obviously, not just because he's my friend. I played alongside him as a kid, right through. I had him as a player when I was coaching, and he's with me now. But Paul, if anybody knows him, will tell you he could have played at even a higher level. He had a good career there, playing for Knockbreda and stuff. But as a goalkeeper, he's definitely the best goalkeeper. As a five-a-side team, you're probably looking for more skill than anything, aren't you? You're looking for boys to get on the ball and keep it.
Yeah, well, every now and again you need somebody as well who's just going to empty somebody or run a couple of headers that goes above head height. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, defensively for me, you have people like Michael McIlwaine, he was very good for me, but John Burns stands out. He's been excellent. I would definitely have him in, but rather he'd be a good five-a-side player, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get as many names in before you stop me here. Barry Moore has done very well for me over the years.
Barry.
Young Connor Corey, who had an horrific injury for me when he played for the Whites. Played for Knockbreda, was Knockbreda's captain for a couple of years. Was a smashing player. But on the ball, definitely Aaron Harsh in the middle of the park. He's still Distillery's captain now. He's a young lad who was loyal to me. Came in from Crusaders, I think it was, at Carrick. Played a few years for me at Foundry, moved into Distillery, and he's now Distillery's captain. And on his day, he can pass the ball through sort of way an eye of a needle. And very, very good at passing. Again, on the ball, I gotta mention Sturdy Doyle, because I don't know why you know Doyle or not. He would turn you inside out, and again and again and again. And great player, great character, one of the funniest men I've met. We were talking about earlier on about going away, maybe on trips and stuff with players, and not that managers should really go with players on the same trip because it can end up a disaster. But there was one year that me and George went to Newcastle with the boys on the weekend, and it was a weekend that my ribs were sore coming home and laughing. Just a bunch of real good lads, no trouble whatsoever. And Doyle would be at the top list of that of entertainment for him and Paul McCord. And then probably Stephen Young as a centre forward. Yeah. He's very, very good. Now, if anybody knows why Bloomer, they're probably going to say, well, why is he not in it? But there's been so many. I've been very, very lucky through having a really decent set of lads through Foundry and through Distillery as well.
Younger was messaging me, asking me why I hadn't got you on the podcast yet. That must be why he wanted me to get you on, because you wanted to make sure you mentioned him.
To be fair, you're nearly on the right note there. So I got warned as well that he better get mentioned. One else.
In terms of then players you've come up against, either playing or coaching against, well, it could be toughest individuals you've come up against, or what's the toughest opponents as a team you've come up against?
Well, obviously we spoke there about Newington and stuff, about how good they were as an opposition. I think the year they won the league that year, I could be wrong, but one of the best results I've ever seen. Now, I know Peter Thompson very well, and what Queen's done last year was remarkable, beating Linfield. His mental thinking there, his forward thinking there of, we've got a wee outside chance if we keep the match at the dub, and rather than go and take the money at Windsor, obviously paid off for him. So that was a remarkable result. But one of the best results I always remember coming through coaching and management was when Newington went to the Oval. And they beat the Glen. So toughest opposition will probably be the likes of Newington and stuff, definitely. As far as players goes, definitely young Matthew King, who's playing for Dundalk at the minute, is the right back. I always find it hard to get a player to get by him and stuff. Individuals for myself, trying to think. You've got me on this one. There's a guy who used to play centre forward for East Belfast called Big Bud, and people might remember him, they might not remember him, but he was about 6'5" and very, very hard to mark. But not only was he very good in the air, he was very good on the ground too. So for me personally, playing against people like that was very hard. But the toughest opposition for me was definitely Newington.
Yeah, we've touched on earlier some of your highs and lows in football, but what would be your biggest high and your worst low? What would be your best and worst moments in football?
Well, I suppose if it's for me personally, the achievement of going on and getting my A license, for me personally, because obviously some younger lads coming through might find it a bit more difficult. Touching on people coming in from professional football and Irish League careers and stuff sometimes can get the door open a wee bit more, but I would advise any young lad to go through. Great to see, like Barry Begley was talking about doing his. Young Jim Irvin, who I remember as a kid, who's playing still for Ballymena. I heard he was on his A license last week. So just as many people as we can get, although there's not that many jobs in this country, I just think the more people that we can get on the coaching ladders at all levels, whether it be their A license or B license or even going and doing their level ones, it's massively important for the next generation coming through to get the proper coaching. But as a team, getting the Steel and Sons was special, but the Border Cup victory and of actually bringing silverware to Albert Foundry. I remember that day the club had invited, I think the club had won it in 1986, and the club had invited that team to come to the match that day, the team who had won it in 1986, and they were all in the clubhouse at the end of the game back at Paisley Park. And I remember that my team coming back and getting a standing ovation coming in there. For anybody to experience something like that, and the hairs in the back of my neck were standing up, and just to see everybody, the Foundry family, because even though some people might not realise it, it's a big club and it has a big family surrounding, and it was really a really good day. So the highs, definitely winning the Border Cup for Albert Foundry. Again, the lows, obviously on a personal note, was speaking about losing the job at the Welders, but again, I'm big enough and enough to bounce back. The other one would be the Steel and Sons Cup final, because I still have that wee gut feeling in my gut. It was terrible that we should have and could have went on to win it, and it would have been a better story. But again, to say, it was good for everybody concerned.
Yeah, it's still an achievement no matter what, but it's also getting so close is always going to be tough to take, so it is. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. But again, as I say, you never know what's around the corner. You never know what opportunities you might get. And as I say, you just got to keep learning from things and learning from experiences and stuff. I still believe, I'm 44, I still believe that I've still got a lot to learn. I still want to go out there and get involved and do what I have to do. And so again, for players coming through, the only thing the advice I give the players is don't expect to get 100% out of football if you don't put it in, because you need to put 100% into your game and into your training and into what you're doing.
Yeah, and you have to humble yourself at times of football as well, really, and be willing to learn, like you said.
No, 100%. I mean, I do a lot of mentoring with young coaches, and the first thing I'll say to them is that no coach knows everything. I can still be working with young coaches and see something that they have done or something that they're doing, and I can take it and put my bit to it and add to it and learn from it. And it's the best thing you can do as a coach is to open your mind and go and watch. And you don't have to copy people. You don't have to do everything that they're doing, but to go out and open your mind and have a look and just learn and be willing to learn. And you're going to learn by your mistakes. You're going to learn by your good decisions and your bad decisions. But mostly it's about even stuff sometimes on the internet or reading up about things, going on your coaching badges. But more, is learning off each other as managers and as coaches.
Yeah, that's it. Like you said earlier as well, the more coaches get the necessary qualifications here, the better standard football we have, and the game itself over here can just keep growing and growing, and the players the standard can rise even more as well.
Look, I have to be honest with you, and I'm not blaming anybody in any perspective, but I can't ever remember being coached as a young lad. I remember maybe when I played for Carrick Rangers doing a bit of a heading drill or something. But as a young person, the opportunities young people are getting now through what the IFA have done and what the other organisations have done. I mean, you're showing people at 4 and 5 and 6 getting proper coaching. Do you know what I mean? And there's far better facilities. There's far more people who are coaching, and a lot of people are going to do it. So yes, I mean, the more people that can go on and do the different levels of different coaching bases, the better it'll be for everybody concerned in the local game.
Yeah, definitely. Colin, thanks very much for giving up your time to speak to me. I really enjoyed finding out about your career, and I love your enthusiasm for coaching in general as well. As a young coach, it's really refreshing to hear, like, so it is as well, because football gives us knocks every now and again, but I'm glad to hear you're back and you're ready to go again.
Oh, well, that's just to say, who knows? If it's going to be immediately, and happy days. If it's not, I'll have to take our time and maybe have to go and watch a few games and maybe have a few beers on a Saturday. That's something that I don't think I've really done that in a long time. I think the social side of football is completely different now than it was when I was certainly coming through.
Yeah.
You don't get too many people going out and socialising and stuff. But we'll get together, myself and George and Jason and Paul, and that. We'll go and try and take as many games in as possible. And if the right opportunity comes along, then it comes along.
Yeah, and I wish you best of luck in your future endeavours. I wish you best of luck whatever club you end up at, or wherever it is, whatever position it is. And I'm sure you've plenty of years left in you as a coach anyway. So maybe you get that monkey off your back with Sid and Sons final as well, hopefully soon.
Well, I hope you're right. No, but listen, thanks for having me on. I'll just take the opportunity to wish everybody all the best with it in these hard times. You're doing a wonderful job keeping it all going, and hopefully your leagues will kick off and you can get them young lads out playing again.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. The podcast is sponsored by Learners Rust Driving School and Drumbo Park Racecourse. We'll be back with another interview next week. Thanks very much for tuning in, folks.